to see. Shalom, 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 everybody. Shalom in the house. What's the deal? Well, I'm about to go ahead and get into these next two chapters. I know one of them long, so I think it's 26.
Daddy?
We'll get into laws 25 and law 26. Law 25 is recreate yourself.
Yeah, that's DJ. Daddy?
Yes, sir.
That's DJ and Mama.
And then law 26, keep your hands clean.
Daddy.
Yes, that's daddy.
That's DJ and Mama.
All right, let's get ready and go.
You're ready to go.
Now, law 25, recreate yourself. Dictionary. Recreate yourself. Judgment. Do not accept the roles that society foists on you. Recreate yourself by forging a new identity, one that commands attention and never bores the audience. Be the master of your own image rather than letting others define it. Seem larger than life. All right, you're good. You're all right. Observance of the law, number 1. Julius Caesar was the first significant mark on Roman society in 65 BC. When he assumed the post of aedile, the official in charge of grain distribution and public games, he began his entrance into the public eye by organizing a series of carefully crafted and well-timed spectacles, wild beasts, hunts, extravagant gladiator shows, theatrical contests. On several occasions, he paid for these spectacles out of his own pockets. To the common man, Julius Caesar became indelibly associated with these much-loved events. As he slowly rose to attain the position of consul, his popularity, yes, that's that, among the masses served as the foundation of his power. Okay, you got to be quiet. Sit down. Sit down so Daddy can read. Yeah. His popularity among the masses served as the foundation of his power. He had created an image of himself as a great public showman. In 49 BC, Rome was on the brink of a civil war between rival leaders, Caesar and Pompey. At the height of the tension, Caesar, an addict of the stage, attended a theatrical performance, and afterward, lost in thought, he wandered in the darkness back to his camp at the Rubicon, the river that divides Italy and from Gaul, where he had been camping. To march his army back into Italy across the Rubicon would mean the beginning of the war with Pompey. Before his staff, Caesar argued both sides, forming the options like an actor on stage, a precursor of Hamlet. Finally, to put his soliloquy to an end, he pointed to a seemingly innocent apparition at the edge of the river. A very tall soldier blasting a call on the trumpet, then goes across the bridge over the Rubicon and pronounced, "Let us accept that as a sign from the gods and follow where they beckon. In vengeance or in double dealing enemies, the die is cast." All of this he spoke pretentiously and dramatically. Gesturing toward the river and looking his generals in the eye. He knew that these generals were uncertain in their support, but his oratory overwhelmed them. lost my place, man.
Place.
Yeah. His oratory overwhelmed them with a sense of the drama of the moment and of the need to seize the time. A more prosaic speech would never have been the same effect. The generals rallied to his cause. Caesar and his army crossed the Rubicon and by the following year had vanquished Pompey, making Caesar dictator of Rome. In warfare, Caesar always played the leading role with gusto. He was as skilled a horseman as any of his soldiers. Get your hands up, and take pride of outdoing them in feats of bravery and endurance. He entered battle astride the strongest mount, so that his soldiers would see him in the thick of the battle, urging them on, also positioning himself in the center, a godlike symbol of power and a model for them to follow. Of all the armies in Rome, Caesar's was the most devoted and loyal. His soldiers, like the common people who had attended his entertainments, had come to identify with him and with his cause. After the defeat of Pompey, the entertainments grew in scale. Nothing like them had ever been seen in Rome. The chariot races became more spectacular, the gladiator fights more dramatic, as Caesar staged fights to the death among the Roman nobility. He organized enormous mock naval battles on an artificial lake. Plays were performed in every Roman ward. A giant new theater was built that sloped dramatically down the Tarpeian rocks. Crowds from all over the empire flocked to these events. No, I'm way over here. The roads to Rome lined with visitors' tents. And in 45 BC, timing his entry into the city for maximum effect and surprise. Caesar brought Cleopatra back to Rome after his Egyptian campaign and staged even more extravagant public spectacles. No, I'm way right here. The word these. Yeah. These events were more than devices to divert the masses. They dramatically enhanced the public senses of Caesar's character and made him seem larger than life. Caesar was the master of his public image, of which he was forever aware. When he appeared before crowds, he wore the most spectacular purple robes.
Baby rose.
Purple robes.
Big rose.
When he appeared before crowds, he wore the most spectacular purple robes. He would be upstaged by no one. He was notoriously vain about his appearance. It was said that one reason he enjoyed being honored by the Senate and people was that on these occasions, right here, and the word occasions, right here. On these occasions, he could wear a laurel wreath, hiding his baldness. Caesar was a masterful orator. He knew how to say a lot by saying a little. Intuitive. No, I'm pronouncing that wrong. Intuited.
Oh no, I know, Daddy.
I got it. Intuited. I'm pronouncing that wrong. Intuited. INT. Yeah, I'm looking for INT. We gotta look for INTU. INT.
They were here.
Intuition. Intuit.
Right here.
It's not in here. Intuitive.
Right here. Right here.
The moment to end a speech for maximum effort. He never failed to incorporate a surprise into his public appearances, a startling announcement that would heighten their drama. Immensely popular among the Roman people, Caesar was hated and feared by his rivals. On the Ides of March 15th in the year 44 BC, a group of conspirators led by Brutus and Cassius surrounded him in the Senate and stabbed him to death. Even dying, however, he kept his sense of drama, drawing the top of his gown over his face. There you go. There you go. There you go. Drawing the top of his gown over his face, he let go of the cloth's lower part so that it draped his legs, allowing him to die covered and decent. According to the Roman historian Suetonius, his final words to his old friend Brutus, who was about to deliver a second blow, were in Greek and as if referenced for the end of the play. You too, my child. You too, my child. You too. You too, my child. You better get your butt down, my child. You better get your butt down before you fall. Right. Interpretation. The Roman theater was an event for the masses, attended by crowds unimaginable today. Packed into enormous auditoriums, the audience would be amused by raucous comedy, or moved by high tragedy. You better be careful with the weights. Theater seemed to contain the essence of life in its concentrated, dramatic form. Like a religious ritual, it had a powerful, instant appeal to the common man. Julius Caesar was perhaps the first public figure to understand the vital link between power and theater. You better leave it over there, man. You're gonna hurt yourself. This was because of his own obsessive interest in drama. He sublimated this interest by making himself an actor and director on the world stage. He said his lines as if they had been scripted. Yeah, you better leave it alone. He gestured and moved through the crowd with a constant sense of how he appeared in his audience. He incorporated surprise into the repertoire, building drama into his speeches, staging into his public appearances. His gestures were broad enough for the common man to grasp that instantly he became immensely popular. Caesar set the ideal for all leaders and people of power. Like him, you most learn to enlarge your actions through dramatic techniques such as surprise, suspense, the creation of sympathy, and symbolic in the identification. Hey, get up. You can be in here. I don't mind. But you gotta be quiet, all right? Also, like him, you must be constantly aware of your audience, of what will please them and what will bore them. You must arrange to place yourself at the center, to command attention, and never be upstage at any cost. Observance of the law 2. In the year 1831, A young woman named Aurora Dupin-Dudevant left her husband and family in the provinces and moved to Paris. Aurora. She went to be a writer. Marriage, she felt, was worse than prison. Marriage, she felt, was worse than prison, for it left her neither the time nor the freedom to pursue her passion. In Paris, she would establish her independence and make her living by writing. Soon after Dudevant arrived in the capital, however, she had to confront certain harsh realities. To have any degree of freedom in Paris, you had to have money. For a woman, money could only come through marriage or prostitution. No woman had even, for a woman, money could only come through marriage and prostitution or prostitution. No woman had ever come close to making a living by writing. Women wrote as a hobby, supported by their husbands or by an inheritance. In fact, when Dudevant first showed her writings to an editor, he told her, "You should make babies, madame, not literature." Clearly, Dudevant had come to Paris to attempt the impossible. In the end, though, she came up with the strategy to do what no woman had ever done. A strategy to recreate herself completely, forging a public image of her own making. Women writers before her had been forced into a ready-made role that was that of second-rate artists who wrote mostly for other women. Dudevant decided that if she had to play a role, she would turn the game around. She would play the part of a man. In 1831, a man. And all of Paris assumed this impressive new writer was male. Dudevant had sometimes worn men's clothing before creating George Sand. She had always found men's shirts and riding breeches more comfortable. Now, as a public figure, she exaggerated the image. She added long men's coats, great hats, heavy boots, and dangerous cravats or cravats, dangerous cravats to her wardrobe. She smoked cigars and in conversation expressed herself like a man, unafraid to dominate the conversation or to use a saucy word. A saucy word. Saucy word. This strange male-female writer fascinated the public. And unlike other women writers, Sand found herself accepted into the clique of male artists. She drank and smoked with them, even carried on affairs with the most famous artists of Europe, Musset, Liszt, Chopin. It was she who did the wooing and also the abandoning. She moved on her own discretion. Those who knew Sand well understood that her male persona protected her from the public's prying eye. Out in the world, she enjoyed playing the part to the extreme. In private, she remained herself. I got you, my boy. Hold on. There you go. She also realized that the character of George Sand could grow stale and predictable. And to avoid this, she would even every now and then dramatically alter the character she had created. Instead of conducting affairs with famous men, she would begin meddling in politics, leading demonstrations, inspiring student rebellions. No one would dictate to her the limits of the character she had created. Long after she died, and after most people had stopped reading her novels, the larger-than-life theatrical, oh man, theatricality of that character has continued to fascinate and inspire. Interpretation. Throughout Sands' public life, acquaintances and other artists who spent time in her company had the feeling they were in the presence of a man. But in her journals and to her closest friends, such a Gustave Flaubert, such as Gustave Flaubert, she confessed that she had no desire to be a man, but was playing a part for the public consumption. What she really wanted was the power to determine her own character. She refused the limits. Man, you better be careful back there, man. She refused the limits her society would have set on her. She did not attain her power, however, by being herself. Instead, she created a persona that she could constantly adapt to her own desires, a persona that attracted attention and gave her presence. Understand this. The world wants to assign a role in life, to assign you a role in life. Man, leave it alone. There we go. Understand this. The world wants to assign you a role in life. And once you accept the role, you're doomed. Your power is limited to the tiny amount allotted to the role you have selected or have been forced to assume. An actor, on the other hand, plays many roles. Enjoy the protein power. Let's see what that is. Protein. Feel it. On daddy foot. Protein. Protein. Versatile. Able to take a different shape. Hold on, man. Hold on. Protein. Protein. Let's see what it says. Enjoy the versatile. Enjoy the ability to take on different shapes. Enjoy the versatile power or the protein power. And if it is beyond you, at least forge a new identity, one of your own making. This act of defiance is Promethean. It makes you responsible for your own action. Your new identity will protect you from the world precisely because it is not you. It is a costume you put on and take off. You need to take it you need not take it personally. And your new identity sets you apart, gives you theatrical presence. Those in the back rows can see you and hear you. Those in the front rows marvel at your audacity. Do not people talk in society of a man being a great actor? They do not mean by that he feels, but that he excels in simulating though he feels nothing, excuse me. Do not people talk in society of a man being a great actor? They do not mean by that he feels, but that he excels in simulating, though he feels nothing. Denis Diderot, 1713 to 1784. Keys to power. The character you seem to have been born with is not necessarily who you are. Beyond the characteristic you have inherited, your parents, your friends, and your peers have helped to shape your personality. The Promethean task of the powerful is to take control of the process, to stop allowing others that ability to limit and mold them. The ability to limit and mold them. Remake yourself into a character of power. Working on yourself like clay should be one of your greatest. Hey, give me that. Give me that. That's enough. I'll let you blow it later. Remaking yourself into remake yourself into a character of power. No, man, look, your horn is right here. You blow your horn. Here, there's your horn. Leave daddy's horn alone, all right? I'll let you blow it after I finish reading, all right? So you need to calm down. Calm down, be quiet, let daddy finish reading. You'll get the horn later. Remake yourself into a character of power. Working on yourself like clay should be working yourself like clay should be one of your greatest and most pleasurable life tasks. It makes you, in essence, an artist creating yourself. In fact, the idea of self-creation comes from the world of art. For thousands of years, only kings and the highest courtiers had the freedom to shape their public image and determine their own identity. Similarly, only kings and the wealthiest lords could contemplate their own image in art and consciously alter it. It's not working? No, you gotta practice. You gotta practice. You're gonna have to practice it. When you can blow that one, then you can blow mine. All right? All right. You got to keep practicing. Similarly, only kings and the wealthiest lords could contemplate their own image in art and consciously alter it. The rest of mankind played the limited role that society demanded on them and had little self-consciousness. A shift in this condition can be detected in Velázquez's painting of Las Meninas, made in 1656. The artist appears at the left of the canvas, standing before a painting that he is in the process of creating, but that has its back to us. We cannot see it. Besides him stands a princess, her attendants, and one of the court's dwarves, all watching him work. The people posing for the painting are not directly visible, but we can see them in a tiny reflection in a mirror on the back of the wall. The king and queen of Spain, who must be sitting somewhere in the foreground, outside the picture. The painting represents a dramatic change in the dynamics of power and the ability to determine one's own position in society. For Velázquez, the artist is far more prominently positioned than the king and queen. In a sense, he is more powerful than they are, since he is clearly the one controlling the image, their image. Velázquez no longer saw himself as the slavish, dependent artist. He remade himself into a man of power, and indeed the first people other than aristocrats to play openly with their image in Western society were artists and writers, and later on dandies and bohemians. What's a bohemian? And what is a dandy? I think I looked it up before. Get there for daddy, my boy. Get there for daddy. Let's look at the word dandies. Dandies. D-A-N-D-I-E-S. Dandies. You got it for me?
Okay.
Thank you, my boy. Appreciate that. It's good?
Good.
All right. Bohemian. It's not in here. You know what it is. Today, the concept of self-creation has slowly filtered down to the rest of society and has become an ideal to inspire too. Like Velasquez, you must demand for yourself the power to determine your position in the painting and to create your own image. The first step in the process of self-creation is self-consciousness, being aware of yourself as an actor and taking control of your appearance and emotions. As Diderot said, the bad actor is the one who is always sincere. People who wear their hearts on their sleeves out in society are tiresome and embarrassing. Their sincerity notwithstanding, it is hard to take them seriously. Those who cry in public may temporarily elicit a sympathetic. Come on, sit down right. Come on, let me see where I'm at. May elicit sympathy, but sympathy soon turns into scorn and irritation at their self obsessiveness. They are crying to get attention. We feel, and a malicious part of us wants to deny them the satisfaction. You better chill out, my boy. Chill out. Go on the front. Go on the front. Since you don't want to be quiet. I'll sit right there. Sit right there for Dad. You sit right there for Dad. Go get your writing book. Go get your writing book out the front. Come sit right there and write, all right? They are crying to get attention. We feel, and a malicious part of us wants to deny them the satisfaction. Good actors control themselves better. They can play sincere and heartfelt, can affect a tear and a compassionate look at will, but they don't have to feel it. They externalize emotion in a form that others can understand. Method acting is fatal in the real world. No ruler or leader could possibly play the part of all of the emotions he showed had to be real. So learn self-control. Adopt the plasticity, the plasticity. Adopt the plasticity of the actor who can mold his or her face to the emotion required. The second step in the process of self-creation is the variation on the George Sand strategy, the creation of a memorable creature. Oh, shit. The creation of a memorable character, one that compels attention, that stands out above the other players on the stage. This was the game. Huh? No, come get your cup of water right here. This was the game Abraham Lincoln played. The homespun, common countryman he knew was a kind of president that America had never had, but would delight in electing. Although many of these qualities came naturally to him, he played them up: the hat and clothes, the beard. No president before him had worn a beard. Lincoln was also the first president to use photographs to spread his image, helping to create the icon of the homespun president. Good drama, however, needs more than an interesting appearance or a single standout moment. Drama takes place over time. It is an unfolding event. Rhythm and timing are critical. One of the most important elements in the rhythm of drama is suspense. Houdini, for instance, could sometimes complete his great rulers from Napoleon to Mao Zedong have used theatrical timing to surprise and divert their public. Federal, what you did? Well, don't be wasting stuff up in here, man. Don't be wasting stuff up in here. Franklin Delano Roosevelt understood the importance of staging political events in a particular order and rhythm. At the end of 1932 presidential elections, the United States was in the midst of a dire economic crisis. Banks were failing at an alarming rate. Shortly after winning the election, Roosevelt went into a kind of retreat. He said nothing about his plans or his cabinet appointments. He even refused to meet the sitting president, Herbert Hoover, to discuss the transition. By the time Roosevelt's inauguration, the country was in a state of high anxiety. In his inaugural address, Roosevelt shifted gears. He made a powerful speech, making it clear that he intended to lead the country in a completely new direction, sweeping away the timid gestures of his predecessors from them in the pace of his speeches and public decisions. Cabinet appointments, bold legislations, unfolding at the incredibly rapid rate. The period after inauguration became known as the 100 days. Huh? Well, you water. You're not getting my water. You're not getting my water. You had your water. It's my water. Mm-mm. And its success in altering the country's mood. My water, my ball. Now I might share it with you. If you ask correctly. If you be like, Daddy, can I have some water, please, Daddy? That's Daddy water. That's my water. Go ahead, drink some so I can get some. The period after the inauguration became known as the 100 days, and its success in altering the country's mood partly stemmed from Roosevelt's clever pacing and use of dramatic contrasts. He held his audience in suspense, then hit them with a series of bold gestures that seemed all the more monumentous because they came from nowhere. You must learn to orchestrate events in a similar manner, never revealing all your cards at once, but unfolding them in a way that heightens their dramatic effects. Man, hell no. Give me my water. Hell no. You gonna make me, hey, keep it up. Besides covering a multitude of sins, good drama can also confuse and deceive an enemy. During World War II, the German playwright Bertolt Brecht worked in Hollywood as a screenwriter. After the war, he was called before the House Committee of the UN American Activities for his supposed communist sympathies. Other writers who had been called to testify planned to humiliate the committee members with an angry, emotional stand. Brecht was wiser. He would play the committee like a violin, charming them while fooling them as well. He carefully rehearsed his responses and brought along some props, notably a cigar on which he puffed away. Knowing the head of the committee liked cigars, and indeed, he proceeded to beguile the committee with well-crafted responses that were ambiguous, funny, and double-edged. Instead of an angry, heartfelt tirade, he ran circles around them with a stage production. Huh? Say it again. Say it one more time. No, you're not riding the four-wheeler. No, sir. We're not riding the four-wheeler. When we get a four-wheeler to ride, we're going to ride it. Yeah, when we get a four-wheeler to ride, we're going to ride it. You just got lucky today. You got lucky. Instead of an angry, heartfelt tirade, he ran circles around them with the stage production, and they let him off scot-free. Other dramatic effects for your repertoire include the bogus. I wonder if that's what it means, bogus. The bogus, an action at a climactical moment that symbolizes your triumph or your boldness. Caesar's dramatic crossing of the Rubicon was a bogus, a move that dazzled the soldiers and gave him heroic proportions. You must also appreciate the importance of stage entrances and exits. When Cleopatra first met Caesar in Egypt, she arrived rolled up in a carpet. Ta-da! Get your hands on that carpet. which she arranged to have unfurled at his feet. George Washington twice left power with flourish and fanfare, first as a general, then as a president who refused to sit for a third term, showing he knew how to make the moment count dramatically and symbolically. Hey, man, get off of there before you fall. Your own existence, your own interests and exits should be crafted and planned as carefully. Remember that overacting can be counterproductive. It is another way of spending too much effort trying to attract attention. The actor Richard Burton discovered early in his career that by standing totally still on stage, he drew attention to himself and away from the other actors. It is less what you do that matters, clearly, than how you do it. Your gracefulness and imposing stillness on the social stage count for more than overdoing your part and moving around too much. Finally, learn to play many roles, to be whatever the moment requires. Adapt your mask to the situation. Be protean. Be protean in the faces you wear. Bismarck played this game to perfection. To a liberal, he was liberal. To a hawk, he was a hawk. He would not be grasped. Where did I hear that before? Where is that before? To a liberal, he was a liberal. To a hawk, he was a hawk. He could not be grasped. And what cannot be grasped cannot be consumed. Image. The Greek sea god Proteus. His power came from his ability to change shape at will, to be whatever the moment required. When Menelaus, brother of Agamemnon, tried to seize him, Proteus transformed himself into a lion, then a serpent, a panther, a boar, running water, and finally a leafy tree. Authority. Know how to be all things to all men. A discreet Proteus, a scholar among scholars, a saint among saints. This is the art of willing over everyone. For like attracts like. Birds of a feather flock together. Chill out, man. Chill out. Follow the lead of the serious and jovial in turn, changing your mood discreetly. Balthazar Gratian, 1601 to 1658. Reversal. There can really be no reversal to this critical law. Bad theater is bad theater. Either appearing natural requires art. Bad acting only creates embarrassment. Of course, you should not be too dramatic. Avoid the histrionic. Avoid the histrionic gesture. But that is simply bad theater anyway, since it violates century-old dramatic laws against overreacting. Come on, man, sit up there if you're gonna sit up there, my boy. In essence, there's no reversal to this law. That was law 25. It's the law. Law 26, keep your hands clean. Judgment. You must seem a paragon of civility and efficiency. Your hands are never soiled by mistakes and nasty deeds. Maintain such a spotless appearance by using others as scapegoats and cat paws to disguise your involvement. Woo wee! I'm gonna try to get through this. Man, I'm not a fast reader, but we're gonna see. This one got some pages in it. This one got some pages. Woo, got some pages. Go put that up. Go put that up. Pick it up. All right. Part 1. Woo! You know it's long. I got a part 1, man. Part 1. Conceal your mistakes. Hey, that's enough. That's enough, man. That's enough. Go on the front. Go on the front. What time it is? Hey, it's time to bed. Go get in the bed. Good night. Put that up. Go get in the bed. Good night. Go get in the bed. Go ahead. Excuse me. Hey, you better go get your butt in the bed. Hurry up. There we go. All right. Conceal your mistakes. Have a scapegoat around to take the blame. Our good name and reputation is more on what we conceal than on what we reveal. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. But those who are truly clever manage to hide them and to make sure someone else is blamed. A convenient scapegoat should always be kept around for such moments. Observance of the law. Near the end of the 2nd century AD, as China's mighty Han Empire slowly collapsed, the great general and imperial minister, Xiao Xiao, emerged as the most powerful man in the country, seeking to extend his power base and to rid himself of the last of his rivals. Xiao Xiao began a campaign to take control of the strategically vital central plain. During the siege of the key city, he slightly miscalculated the timing for supplies of grain to arrive from the capital. As he waited for the shipment to come in, the army ran low on food, and Xiao Xiao was forced to order the chief of the commissariat to reduce its rations. I guess it's like the commissary. Xiao Xiao kept a tight rein on the army and ran a network of informers. His spies soon reported that the men were complaining, grumbling that he was living well while they themselves had barely enough to eat. Perhaps Xiao Xiao was keeping the food for himself, they murmured. If the grumbling spread, Xiao Xiao could have a mutiny on his hands. He summoned the chief of the commissariat to his tent. I want to ask you to lend me something, and you must not refuse. Xiao Xiao told the chief. What is it? The chief replied, I want the loan of your head to show to his troops. Says Xiao Xiao. But I've done nothing wrong, cried the chief. I know, said Xiao Xiao with a sigh. But if I do not put you to death, there will be a mutiny. Do not grieve after you're gone. Damn. I'll look after your family. Put this way. Damn, Xiao Xiao. Put this way. The request left the chief no choice. This will be put it this way. Put it this way. The request left the chief no choice, so he resigned himself to his fate and was beheaded that very day. Seeing his head on public display, the soldiers stopped grumbling. Some saw through Xiao Xiao's gestures, but kept quiet, stunned and intimidated by his violence, and most accepted his version of who was to blame, preferring to believe in his wisdom and fairness than in his incompetence and cruelty. Interpretation: Xiao Xiao came to power in an extremely tumultuous time. In the struggle for supremacy in the crumbling Han Empire, enemies had emerged from all sides. The battle for the Central Plain had proven more difficult than he imagined, and money and provisions were a constant concern. No wonder that under such stress, he had forgotten to order supplies in time. Cao Cao had two options: apology and excuses, or a scapegoat. Understanding the workings of power and the importance of appearance as he did, Xiao Xiao did not hesitate for a moment. He shopped around for the most convenient head and had it served up immediately. Occasional mistakes are inevitable. The world is just too unpredictable. People of power, however, are undone not by the mistakes they make, but by the way they deal with them. Like surgeons, they must cut away the tumor with speed and finality. Excuses and apologies are much too blunt tools for the delicate operation. The powerful avoid them. By apologizing, you open up all sorts of doubt about your competence, your intentions, any other mistakes you may not have confessed. Excuses satisfy no one, and apologies make everyone uncomfortable. Excuses satisfy no one, and apologies make everyone uncomfortable. The mistake does not vanish with an apology. It deepens and festers. But to cut it off instantly, distract attention from yourself and focus attention on a convenient scapegoat before people have time to ponder your responsibility or your possible incompetence. I would rather betray the whole world than let the world betray me. General Xiao Xiao, 155 to 220 AD. Observance of the law. Ooh-wee. For several years, Caesar Borgia campaigned to gain control of large parts of Italy in the name of his father, Pope Alexander. In the year 1500, he managed to take Romagna in northern Italy. The region had for years been ruled by a series of greedy masters who had plundered its wealth for themselves. Without police or any disciplining force, it had descended into lawlessness. Let me mark that. Without police or any disciplining force, it descended into lawlessness. Whole areas being ruled by robbers and feuding families. To establish order, Caesar appointed a lieutenant general of the region, Ramiro de Orca, a cruel and vigorous man, according to the Niccolo Machiavelli. Caesar gave de Orca absolute powers. With energy and violence, de Orca established a severe, brutal justice in Romagna and soon rid it of almost all of its lawless elements. But in his zeal, he sometimes went too far, and after a couple of years, the local population resented and even hated him. In December of 1502, Caesar took decisive action. He first let it be known that he had not approved of de Orca's cruel and violent deeds, which stemmed from the lieutenant's brutal nature. Then, On December 22nd, he imprisoned the orca in the town of Cesena. And the day after Christmas, townspeople awoke to find a strange spectacle in the middle of the piazza. The orca's headless body, dressed in a lavish suit with a purple cape, the head impaled beside it on a pike, the bloody knife and executioner's block laid out beside the head. As Machiavelli concluded his comments on the affair, the ferocity of the scene left the people at once stunned and satisfied. What? Go to bed, man. Go get in the bed, man. Matter of fact, come get your cup. Come get your cup. Come get your cup. Here your cup. Come get your cup. Come give me a hug. Hug, maybe my hug. I love you. It's time for bed. Good night. Here's your cup. Tell your brother, DJ, it's time for bed. Both of y'all go get in the bed, all right? Good night, son. All right. Good night. All right. I'll be in there in a little bit. After I finish reading, I'll come in there. Interpretation. Yes, tell DJ go to bed. Caesar Borgia was a master player in the game of power, always planning several moves ahead. He sets his opponents the cleverest traps. For this, Machiavelli honored him above all others. In The Prince, Caesar foresaw the future with amazing clarity in Romagna. Only brutal justice would bring order to the region. The process will take several years, and at first the people would welcome it, but it would soon make many enemies, and the citizens would come to resent the imposition of such unforgiving justice, especially by outsiders. Caesar himself then could not be seen as the agent of the justice. The people's hatred would cause too many problems in the future. And so he chose the one man who could do the dirty work, knowing in advance that once the task was done, he would have to display the orca's head on the pike. The scapegoat in this case, had been planned from the beginning. With Salsal, the scapegoat was an entirely innocent man. In the Romagna, he was the offensive weapon in Caesar's arsenal that let him get the dirty work done without blooding his own hands. With this second kind of scapegoat, it is wise to separate yourself from the hatchet man at the same point, either leaving him dangling in the wind or, like Caesar, even making yourself the one to bring him to justice. Not only are you free of involvement in the problem, you can appear as one who cleaned it up. The Athenians regularly maintained a number of degraded and useless beings at the public's expense, and when any calamity, such as plagues, drought, or famine befell the city, these scapegoats were led about and then sacrificed, apparently by being stoned outside the city. The Golden Boat, Sir James George Fraser, in 1854 to 1941. Keys to power. The use of scapegoats is as old as civilization itself, and examples of it can be found in cultures around the world. The main idea behind these sacrifices is the shifting of guilt and sin to an outside figure, object, animal, or man, which is then banished or destroyed. The Hebrews used to take a live goat, hence the term scapegoat. The Hebrews upon whose head the priest would lay both hands while confessing the sins of the children of Israel. We everywhere, baby. Israel, we everywhere. Having thus had those sins transferred to it, the beast would be led away and abandoned in the wilderness. With the Athenians and the Aztecs, the scapegoat was human, often a person fed and raised for the purpose. Since famine and plague were thought to be visited on humans by the gods in punishment for wrongdoing, the people suffered not only from the famine and plague themselves, but from blame and guilt. They freed themselves of guilt by transferring it to an innocent person whose death was intended to satisfy the divine powers and banish the evil from their midst. It is an extreme human response to not look inward after a mistake or crime, but rather to look outward and to affix blame and guilt on the convenient object. When the plague was ravaging Thebes, Oedipus looked everywhere for its cause, everywhere except inside himself and his own sin of incest, which had so offended the gods and occasioned the plague. This profound need to externalize, it's my bad. This profound need to exteriorize one's guilt, to project it on another person or object, has an immense power, which the clever know how to harness. Sacrifice is a ritual, perhaps the most ancient ritual of all. Ritual, too, is a wellspring of power. In the killing of the oracle, note Caesar's symbolic and ritualistic display of his body. By framing it in a dramatic way, he focused guilt outward. The citizens of Romagna responded instantly because it comes so naturally to us to look outward rather than inward. We readily accept the scapegoat's guilt. The bloody sacrifice of the scapegoat seems a barbaric relic of the past, but the practice lives on today. And indirectly and symbolically, since power depends on appearances, and those in power must seem never to make mistakes, the use of scapegoats is as popular as ever. What modern leader will take responsibility for his blunders? What modern leader will take responsibility for his blunders? He searches out others to blame, a scapegoat to sacrifice. When Mao Zedong, a cultural revolution, failed miserably, he made no apologies or excuses to the Chinese people. Instead, like Xiao Xiao, before him, he offered up scapegoats, including his own personal secretary and high-ranking member of the party, Xiong Po-tai. Franklin D. Roosevelt had a reputation for honesty and fairness. Throughout his career, however, he faced many situations in which being a nice guy would have spelled political disaster. Yet he could not be seen as an agent of any foul play. For 20 years, then, his secretary, Louis Howe, played the role the Orca had. He handled the backroom deals and manipulation of the press, the underhanded campaign maneuvers. And whenever the mistakes was committed or a dirty trick contradicted Roosevelt's carefully crafted image became public, Howe served as a scapegoat and never complained. Besides conveniently shifting blame, a scapegoat can serve as a warning to others. In 1631, a plot was hatched to oust Francis Cardinal Richelieu from power, a plot that became known as the Day of the Dupies. It almost succeeded, since it involved the upper echelon of government, including the Queen Mother, but through and luck and his connivances. Through his connivances, Richelieu survived. Connivances. I believe that. Connivances. One more. Maybe that's got something. Connivances. I say connivances. One of the key conspirators was the man named Marilek, the keeper of the seals. Richelieu could not imprison him without implicating the Queen Mother, an extremely dangerous tactic. So he targeted Marilek's brother, a marshal in the army. This man had no involvement in the plot. Richelieu, however, afraid that other conspiracies might be in the air, especially in the army, decided to set an example. He tried the brother on trumped up charges and had him executed. In this way, he indirectly punished the real perpetrator, who had thought himself protected, and warned any future conspirators that he would not shrink from sacrificing the innocent to protect his own power. In fact, it is often wise to choose the most innocent victim possible as the scapegoat. Such people will not be powerful enough to fight you, and their naive protest may be seen as protesting too much, may be seen, in other words, as a sign of their guilt. Be careful, however, by the incompetence of those around you. If the scapegoat appears too weak and his punishment too cruel, you may end up the victim. Sometimes you should find a more powerful scapegoat, one who will elicit less sympathy in the long run. Hey, go get in the bed. One who might elicit sympathy in the long run. In this vein, history has time and again shown the value of using the close associate as a scapegoat. This is known as the fall of the favorite. This is known as the fall of the favorite. Most kings had a personal favorite, sometimes for no apparent reason, and lavished with favors and attention. But this court favor could serve as a convenient scapegoat in case of a threat that the king's reputation. My bad. The public would readily believe in the scapegoat's guilt. Why would the king sacrifice his favorite unless he were guilty? And the other courtiers, resentful in the favorite anyway, would rejoice at his downfall. The king, Meanwhile, would rid him of himself of a man who by the time had probably learned too much about him, perhaps became arrogant and even disdainful of him. Choosing a close associate as a scapegoat has the same value as the fall of the favorite. You may lose a friend or a ride. You may lose a friend or a ride, but in the long-term scheme of things, it is more important to hide your mistake than to hold on to someone who one day will probably turn against you. Besides, you can always find a new favorite to take their place. Pooh, cutthroat. That boy cutthroat. You can always find a new favorite. That's right. I mean, it's true. Image. The innocent goat. Oh, this for my people. What up, Ross? Image. The innocent goat. On the Day of Atonement, the high priest brings the goat into the temple, places his hands on his head, and confesses the people's sins, transferring guilt to the guiltless beast, which is then led to the wilderness and abandoned. The people's sins and blame vanishing with him. Authority. Folly consists not of committing folly, but in being incapable of concealing it. All men make mistakes, but the wise conceal the blunders they have made, which fools make them public, while fools make them public. Reputation depends more on what is hidden than on what is seen. If you can't be good, be careful. Balthazar Gratian, 1601 to 1658. If you can't be good, be careful. Part 2. Make use of cat paws. In the fable, the monkey grabs the paws of his friend, the cat, and uses it to fish chestnuts out of the fire. Damn. Thus getting the nuts he craves without hurting himself. If there is nothing unpleasant or unpopular that needs to be done, it is far too risky for you. If there is something unpleasant or unpopular that needs to be done, it is far too risky for you to do the work yourself. You need a cat's paw, someone who does the dirty, dangerous work for you. The cat's paw grabs what you need, hurts whom you need hurt, and keeps people from noticing that you are the one responsible. Let someone else be an executioner or the bearer of bad news, while you bring only joy and good tidings. Observance of the law. 1. In 59 BC, the future queen Cleopatra of Egypt, then 10 years old, witnessed the overthrow and banishment of her father, Ptolemy XII, at the hands of his elder daughters, her own sisters. One of the daughters, one of his daughters, Berenice, emerged as the leader of the rebellion. And to ensure that she would now rule Egypt alone, she emerged in her own. This may have been necessary as a practical step to secure her rule, but that a member of the royal family, a queen no less, would so overtly exact such violence on her own family horrid her subjects and stirred up powerful opposition. 4 years later, this opposition was able to return Ptolemy to power, and he promptly had Bernice and the elder sisters beheaded. In 51 BC, Ptolemy died, leaving 4 remaining children as heirs. As was the tradition in Egypt, the eldest son, Ptolemy XIII, only 10 at the time, married the elder sister Cleopatra, now 18. And now The couple took the throne together as king and queen. Now, none of the four children felt satisfied with this. Everyone, including Cleopatra, wanted more power. A struggle emerged between Cleopatra and Ptolemy, each trying to push the other to the side. In 48 BC, with the help of a government faction that feared Cleopatra's ambitions, Ptolemy was able to force his sister to flee the country, leaving himself as sole ruler. In exile, Cleopatra schemed. She wanted to rule alone and to restore Egypt to its past glory, a goal she felt none of her other siblings could achieve. Yet, the example of barrenness had made it clear that no one could serve the queen who was seen murdering her own kind. Even Ptolemy the 13th had not dared murder Cleopatra, although he knew she would plot against him from abroad. Within a year after Cleopatra's banishment, the Roman dictator Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt. Determined to make the country a Roman colony, Cleopatra saw her chance. Re-entering Egypt in disguise, she traveled hundreds of miles to reach Caesar in Alexandria. Legend has it that she had herself smuggled into his presence, rolled up inside a carpet, which was gracefully unfurled at his feet, revealing the young queen. Cleopatra immediately went to work on the Roman. She appealed to his love of spectacle and to his interest of Egyptian history and poured on her feminine charms. She appealed to his love of spectacle and his interest in Egyptian history and poured on her feminine charms. Caesar was succumbed and restored Cleopatra to the throne. Cleopatra's siblings seethed. She was outmaneuvering them. Ptolemy the 13th would not wait to see what happened next. From his palace in Alexandria, he summoned a great army to march on the city and attack Caesar. In response, Caesar immediately put Ptolemy and the rest of the family under house arrest. But Cleopatra's younger sister, Arsinoe, escaped from the palace and placed herself at the head of the approaching Egyptian troops, proclaiming herself Queen of Egypt. Now Cleopatra finally saw her chance. She convinced Caesar to release Ptolemy from house arrest under the agreement that he would broker a truce. Of course, she knew he would do the opposite, that he would fight Arsinoe for control of the Egyptian army. But this was to Cleopatra's benefit, for it would divide the royal family. But still, it would give Caesar the chance to defeat and kill her siblings in battle. Woo-wee. Reinforced by troops from Rome, Caesar swiftly defeated the rebels. In the Egyptians' retreat, Ptolemy drowned in the Nile. Damn. Ptolemy drowned in the Nile. And the Pharaoh. Caesar captured Arsinoe and had her sent to Rome as a prisoner. He also executed the numerous enemies who had conspired against Cleopatra and imprisoned others who had opposed her. To reinforce her position as uncontested queen, Cleopatra now married the only sibling left, Ptolemy the 14th, only 11 at the time, and the weakest of lot. 4 years later, Ptolemy mysteriously died of poison. In 41 BC, Cleopatra employed on a second Roman leader, Mark Antony, the same tactics she had used so well on Julius Caesar. After seducing him, she hinted to him that her sister Arsinoe, still a prisoner in Rome, had conspired to destroy him. Mark Antony believed her and promptly had Arsinoe executed, thereby getting rid of the last of the siblings who had posed such a threat to Cleopatra. Woo-wee. Time out. Time out. Time out. We'll keep going, but let me get time. Man, hold up. Interpretation. Legend has it that Cleopatra succeeded through her seductive charms, but in reality, her power came from the ability to get people to do her bidding without realizing they were being manipulated. Caesar and Antony did not only rid her of her most dangerous siblings, Ptolemy the 13th and Arsinoe, they decimated all of her enemies in both the government and military. The two men became her catpaws. They became the fire for her, did the ugly but necessary work, while shielding her from appearing as the destroyer of her siblings and fellow Egyptians. And in the end, both men acquiesced to her desire to rule Rome, not as a Roman. To rule Egypt. Excuse me, not as a Roman colony, but as in the most powerful kind. A queen must never dirty her hands with ugly tasks, nor can a king appear in public with blood on his face. Yet power cannot survive without the constant squashing of enemies. There will always be dirty little tasks dirty little tasks that have to be done to keep you on the throne. Like Cleopatra, you need a cat's paw. This will usually be a person from outside your immediate circle who will therefore be unlikely to realize how he or she is being used. You will find these dupes everywhere. People who enjoy doing you favors, especially if you throw them a minimal bone or two in exchange. But as they accomplish the task that may seem to them innocent enough, or at least completely justified, they are actually clearing the field for you, spreading the information you feed them, undermining people they do not realize are your rivals, and inadvertently furthering your cause, dirtying their hands while yours remain spotless. Observance of the law too. In the late 1920s, civil war broke out in China as the nationalist and communist parties battled for control of the country. In 1927, Chiang Kai-shek, the nationalist leader, vowed to kill every last communist, and over the next few years, he nearly accomplished his task, pushing his enemies were decimated. Woo-wee. In 1936, Chiang planned one last offensive to wipe them out. But he was caught in a mutiny. His own soldiers captured him and turned him over to the communists. Now he could only expect the worst. Meanwhile, however, the Japanese began an invasion of China, and much to Chiang's surprise, instead of killing him, the communist leader Mao Zedong proposed a deal. The communists would let him go and would recognize him as commander of their forces as well as his, if he would agree to fight alongside them against their common enemy. Chiang had expected torture and execution. Now he could not believe his luck. How soft these Reds had become. Without having to fight a rearguard action against a re a re-argued, there we go, a re-argued action against the communists. He knew he could beat the Japanese, and then a few years down the line, he would turn around and destroy the Reds with ease. He had nothing to lose and everything to gain by agreeing to their terms. The communists proceeded to fight the Japanese in their usual fashion, with hit and run guerrilla tactics, while naturalists fought a more conventional war. Together, after several years, they succeeded in evicting the Japanese. Now, however, Shang finally understood what Mao had really planned. His own army had met the brunt of the Japanese artillery. His own army had met the brunt, and to spread and gain pockets of influence all over China. As soon as the war against the Japanese ended, the Civil War started again. But this time, the communists enveloped the weakened nationalists and slowly beat them into submission. The Japanese had served as Mao's cat's paw, inadvertently plowing the fields for the communists and making possible their victory over Chiang Kai-shek. Interpretation. Hey, DJ, go give me a water. Interpretation. Most leaders who had taken as powerful an enemy as Chiang Kai-shek prisoner would have made sure to kill him. But in doing so, they would have lost the chance Mao exploited. Without the experienced Chiang as leader of the nationalists, the fight to drive the Japanese out might have lasted much longer, with devastating results. Mao was far too clever to let anger spoil the chance to kill two birds with one stone. In essence, Mao used two cat paws to help obtain total glory. First, he cleverly baited Xiao Sheng into taking charge of the war against the Japanese. Mao knew the nationalists led by Sheng would do most of the hard fighting and would succeed in pushing the Japanese out of the country. If they did not have to concern themselves with fighting the communists at the same time. The nationalists then were the first cat paw used to evict the Japanese. But Mao also knew that in the process of leading the war against the invaders, the Japanese artillery and air support would decimate the conventional forces of the nationalists. Doing damage, it could take the communists decades to inflict. Why waste time and lives of the Japanese if the Japanese could do the job quickly? My bad. It was this wise policy of using one cat's paw after another that allowed the communists to prevail. There are two uses of the cat's paw: to save appearances, as Cleopatra did, and to save energy and effort. The latter case in particular demands that you plan several moves in advance, realizing that a temporary move backward, letting Shango say can lead to a giant leap forward. If you are temporarily weakened and need time to recover, it will often serve you well to use those around you both as a screen to hide your intentions and as a cat's paw to do your work for you. Look for a powerful third party who shares an enemy with you, if for different reasons. Then take advantage of their superior power to deal blows to guide them into hostilities. Always search out the overly aggressive as potential cat paws. They are often more than willing to get into a fight, and you can choose just the right fight for your purposes. Observance of the law 3. Man, woo, woo. Woo, woo. Kuriyama Daisen was an adept of Shao no Yu, hot water for tea, the Japanese tea ceremony. Shao no Yu, and a student of the teachings of the great tea master Sen Noriki. Around 1620, Daisen learned that a friend of his, Hoshino Soman, had borrowed a large sum of money, 300 ryo, to help uh, a relative who had fallen into debt. But although Simon had managed to bail out his relative, he had simply displaced the burden onto someone else. Daisen knew Simon well. He neither cared nor understood much about money. He could easily get into trouble through slowness in repaying the loan, which had been made by a wealthy merchant called Kawakawa, Kawachaya Sanoman. Yet, if Daisen offered to help Soman pay back the loan, he would refuse out of pride and might even be offended. One day, Daisen visited his friend, and after touring the garden and looked at some prized peonies, they retired to his reception room. Here, Daisen saw a painting by the master Kyono Tuna. "Hey," Daisen exclaimed, "a splendid piece of painting. I don't know when I have seen anything I like better." After several more bouts of praise, Solomon had no choice. "Well," he said, "since you like it so much, I hope you will do me the favor of accepting it." At first, Daisen refused. What the fuck is that? At first, Daisen refused. But when Soman insisted, he gave in. The next day, Soman in turn received a package from Daisen. Instead, it was a beautiful and delicate vase. When Daisen, in an accompanying note, asked his friend to accept as a token of his appreciation for the painting that Soman had so graciously. If Soman did not care for the vase, Daisen suggested he might make a gift of it to an adherent of Shao Yu, perhaps a merchant, Kawashaya Cinnamon, who had often expressed a desire to possess it. I hear Daisen continue. He has a fine piece of fancy paper, the 300 Ryu IOU, which would now, which you would much like. Man, it is possible you might arrange an exchange. Realizing what his gracious friend was up to, Simon took the vase to the wealthy lender. However did you get this?" exclaimed Cinnamon. When someone showed him the vase, "I have often heard of it, but this is the first time I've ever seen it. It is such a treasure that it is never allowed outside the gate." He instantly offered to exchange the debt notes for the flower vase and to give Soman 300 ryo more on top of it. But Soman who did not care for money, only wanted the debt note back, and Cinnamon gladly gave it to him. Then Soman immediately hurried to Diazin's house to thank him for his clever support. Interpretation. Kuriyama Diazin, Kuriyama Diazin. If it is done with fuss and obviousness, its receiver feels burdened by an obligation. This may give the doer a certain power, but it is a power that will eventually self-destruct, for it will stir up resentment and resistance. A favor done indirectly and elegantly has 10 times more power. Dyson knew a direct approach would only have offended Soman, but letting his friend give him the painting, however, he made Soman feel that he too had pleased his friend with a gift. In the end, all three parties emerged from the encounter feeling fulfilled in their own way. In essence, Diazin made himself a cat's paw, the tool to take the chestnuts out of the fire. He must have felt some pain in losing the vase, but he gained not only the painting, but more important, the power of the courtier. The courtier used his gloved hands to soften any blows against him, of rescue, elegant and clean. By helping others, the courtier eventually helped himself. Diazin's example provides a paradigm for every favor done between friends and peers. Never impose your favors. Search out ways to make yourself the cat's paws, indirectly extricating your friends from distress without imposing yourself or making them feel obligated to you. One should not be too straightforward. Go and see the forest. The straight trees are cut down. The crooked ones are left standing. Keys to power. Oh, we're almost done. 2 more pages. Keys to power. As a leader, you may imagine that constant diligence and the appearance of working harder than anyone else signify power. Actually, though, they have the opposite effect. They imply weakness. Why are you working so hard? Perhaps you are incompetent and have to put an extra effort just to keep up. Perhaps you are the one of those people who does not know how to delegate and has to meddle in everything. The truly powerful are, on the other hand, seem never to be in a hurry or overburdened. I like that. The truly powerful, on the other hand, seem never to be hurt in a hurry or overburdened. While others work their fingers to the bone, they take their leisure. They know how to find the right people to put in the effort while they save their energies and keep their hands out of the fire. Similarly, you may believe that by taking on the dirty work yourself, involving yourself directly in unpleasant actions, you impose your power and instill fear. In fact, you make yourself look ugly and abusive of your high position. Truly powerful people keep their hands clean. Only good things surround them. The only announcements they make are of glorious achievements. They will often find it necessary, of course, to expand energy or to effect an evil but necessary action. But you must never appear to be their actions agent. Find a cat's paw. Develop the art of finding, using, and in time, getting rid of these people when their cat's paw role has been fulfilled. Ooh-wee. On the eve of the important river battle, the great third century Chinese strategist Chuko Lang found himself falsely accused of secretly working with the other side. As proof of his loyalty, his commander ordered him to produce 100,000 arrows for the army within 3 days and be put to death. I heard this one. Instead of trying to manufacture the arrows, an impossible task, Lao took on took a dozen boats and had bundles of straw lashed to their sides. Yeah, I did. In the late afternoon, when mist always blanketed the river, he floated the boats towards the enemy camp, fearing a trap from the wily Shiko Lang. The enemy did not attack. The enemy did not attack with barely visible boats. With boats of their own, with barely visible boats, with boats of their own, but showered them with arrows from the bank. As Lao boats inched closer, they redoubled the rain of arrows, which stuck in the thick straw after several hours. Excuse me, in the thick straw, my bad, running on. After several hours, the men hiding on board sailed the vessels quickly downstream, where Shuko Lang met them and collected his 100,000 arrows. Shuko Lang would never do work that others could do for him. Huh. He was always thinking about tricks like this one. Excuse me. The key to playing such a strategy is the ability to think far ahead, to imagine ways in which other people can be baited into doing the job for you. An essential element in making the strategy work is to disguise your goal, shrouding it in mystery, like the strange enemy boats appearing dimly in the mist. When your rivals cannot be sure what you are after, they will react in ways that often work against them in the long run. In fact, they will become the cat's paw. If you disguise your intentions, it is much easier to guide them into the moves to accomplish exactly what you want done. But prefer not to do it. But prefer not to do yourself. This may require planning several moves in advance, like a billiards ball that bounces off the sides a few times before heading into the right pocket. The early 20th century American con artist Yellow Kid Weil knew that no matter how skillful, he honed in on the perfect wealthy sucker. If he, excuse me, if he, a stranger, excuse me, man, if he, a stranger, approached this man directly, the sucker might become suspicious. So Well would find someone the sucker would already knew to serve as a cat's paw. Somehow, lower on the totem pole, who was himself an unlikely target and would therefore be less suspicious. Woo-wee. Why would an interest? Why would an interest? Why would interest this man in his incredible wealth? Convinced of the scheme was failed, the cat's paw would often suggest, without prompting, that his boss or wealthy friend should get involved. Having more cash to invest, this man would increase the size of the pot, making bigger bucks for all concerned. The cat's paw would then involve the wealthy sucker who had been Well's target all along. But who would not suspect the trap? Ooh-wee. The cat's paw would then involve a wealthy sucker who had been Will's target all along, but who would not suspect the trap, since it was his trusty subordinate who had roped him in. Devices like this devices like this are often the best way to approach a person of power. Go give me a bottle of water, man. Use an associate or subordinate to hook you up with your primary target. The cat's paw establishes your credibility and shields you from the unsavory appearance of being too pushy in your courtship. The easiest and most effective way to use a cat's paw is often to plant information with him that he will then spread to your primary target. False or planted information is powerful too, especially if spread by a dupe whom no one suspects. You will find it very easy to play innocent and disguise yourself as a source. Why are you not in bed? I asked Man for something to do. Well, don't worry, DJ. I have one more page left, and after I finish this last page, it's bedtime, my boy. The strategic therapist, Dr. Milton H. Erickson, would often encounter among his parents a married couple in which the wife wanted the therapy, but the husband absolutely refused it. Rather than wasting energy trying to deal with the man directly, Dr. Erickson would see the wife alone, and as she talked, he would interject interpretations of the husband's behavior that he knew would rile the husband up if he heard them. Sure enough, the wife would tell her husband what the doctor had said. Oh, I see. After a few weeks, the husband would be furious. He would insist on joining the wife in the sessions so he could set the doctor straight. Finally, you would find cases in which deliberately offering yourself as a cat's paw would ultimately gain you great power. This is the roots of the perfect courtier. Its symbol is Sir Walter Riley, who once placed his own cloak on the muddy ground. Oh, that's where they get that shit from. Its symbol is Sir Walter Riley, who once placed his own cloak on the muddy ground so that Queen Elizabeth would not sully her shoes. As an instrument that protects a master or peer from unpleasantness or danger, you gain immense respect, which sooner or later will pay dividends. And remember, if you can make your assistant subtle and gracious rather than boastful and burdensome, your recompense will be that much the more satisfying and powerful. Image. The cat's paw. It has long claws to grab things. It is soft and padded. Take hold of the cat and use its paw to pluck things out of the fire, to claw your enemy, to play with the mouse before devouring. Sometimes you hurt the cat, but most often it doesn't feel a thing. Authority. Do everything pleasant yourself, everything unpleasant through third parties. By adapting the first course, you win favor. By taking the second, you deflect ill will. Important affairs often require rewards and punishments. Important affairs often require rewards and punishments. Let only the good come from you and the evil from others. Balthazar Gracian, 1601 to 1658. The cat's paw and the scapegoat must be used with extreme reversal. The cat's paw and the scapegoat must be used with extreme caution that hide your own involvement in dirty work from the public. If at any moment the screens is lifted and you are seen as the manipulator, the puppet master, the whole dynamic turns around. Your hand will be seen everywhere, and you will be blamed for misfortunes you may have had nothing to do with. Once the truth is revealed, events will snowball beyond your control. In 1572, Queen Catherine de Medici of France conspired to do away with Gaspard de Coligny, an admiral in the French Navy and a leading member of the Huguenot French Protestant community. Coligny, Coligny was close to Catherine's son, Charles the Ninth. Charles, I think it's Charles. What's the one in front of X? The one in front of X is the Ninth. Charles 1X. Mm-hmm. And she feared his growing influence on the young man. So she arranged for a member of the Guise family, one of the most powerful royal clans in France, to assassinate him. Secretly, however, Catherine had another plan. She wanted the Huguenots to blame the Guises for killing one of their leaders and to take revenge. With one blow, she would erase and injure two threatening rivals, Coligny and the Guise family. Yet both plans went awry. The assassin missed his target, only wounding the attack on him, and he told the king so. Eventually, the failed assassination and the arguments that ensued from it set off a chain of events that led to a bloody civil war between Catholics and Protestants, culminating in the horrifying massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, in which thousands of Protestants were killed. If you have the use of a cat's paw or a scapegoat in an action of great consequence, be very careful. Too much can go wrong. Too much can go wrong. It is often wiser to use such dupes in more innocent endeavors, where mistakes and miscalculations will cause no serious harm. Finally, there are moments when it is advantageous to not disguise your involvement or responsibility, but rather to take the blame yourself for some mistake. If you have the power and are secure in it, you should sometimes play the penitent. With a sorrowful look, you ask for forgiveness from those weaker than you. It is a ploy of the king who makes a show of his own sacrifices for the good of the people. Similarly, upon occasion, you may want to appear as an agent of punishment in order to install fear and trembling in your subordinates. Instead of the cat's paws, you show your own mighty hand as a threatening gesture. Play such a card sparingly. If you play it too often, you will turn into resentment. Fear will turn into resentment and hatred. Before you know it, such emotions will spark a vigorous opposition that will someday bring you down. Get into the habit of using cat's paws. It is far safer. Whoo, Lord. That was Law 26. Thank y'all for rocking with me, man. Law 26. Where's the law? Law 26. Keep your hands clean. Ooh, Lord, that was a long one, man. That was a long one. But next time, man, we'll come back and read. Hopefully it ain't as long as that one. Oh, Lord. I guess when you start getting to the later laws, it start getting long. We'll read Law 27. Play on people's needs. To believe, to create a cult-like following. Yeah, I'll start reading one chapter. I'll start reading one chapter live because these other chapters are pretty long. And I'll read chapters if there's any. And it's not looking like it. Woo-wee. Yeah, well, that's that. Hey, shalom, everybody, man. Thank y'all for putting up with my yawning behind on this live, man. I pushed through chapter 26. We'll come back with, Law 26. We'll come back with Law 27. Law 27, definitely tomorrow, because that's one chapter. We'll get it out the way. We'll get Law 27 out the way. I just got to find a time, man. Once I find a time, we'll keep the lives at that time. So that way, whoever want to keep up with the readings can keep up with the readings. But shalom. That's your boy Shalom. I appreciate everybody sticking in with me. The 48 Laws of Power. A Robert Greene book. By Robert Greene, a Joyce Elfers book. And we're past the half point. We're past the halfway mark. Shalom. Shalom. Shalom.